Alright, so I played a game recently called Black Skylands. It's got to be the only game I've played in early access which actually released and I've even enjoyed. Just time after time, more to come soon, stay tuned, and years go by. Anyway, that's just me bitching about slow release dates. The game is good, I recommend it, although I think it's one of those games which is very consistent throughout. Which means that if you didn't like it in 5 minutes, you're probably not gonna like it 16 hours in. Which is how long it actually took me to complete. What is it about? Humanity is on the brink of destruction. After a vast cataclysm took down the entire planet, somehow everyone was taken up in the sky. Now, living on these floating islands, traveling in a steampunk airship and fighting each other for scraps, they try to make it. Then dastardly falcons make their move, and yet there is a much bigger threat on the horizon. It's actually a pretty cool premise, this sort of nagrant kind of world. I'm surprised it isn't used more often, which, okay, I have a longer point about it later. What did I enjoy? The top-down gameplay. I guess I was really missing this from back in the Flash game era. It's snappy, it's explosive, the enemies are satisfying to fight, there's some skill involved with a dodge roll, customizable guns and handful of cooldown-based abilities, all the while also having a ship combat. It's a really solid gameplay loop. Not much to add. I also like the twist, which was simple and predictable, but there is one little twist which throws so much shade toward every single video game protagonist and makes it great. I'm not gonna spoil it and just say it was a cool one. The engine was good too. I think if there was some sort of Black Skylands 2 or an expansion which continues from that, I would very much enjoy it. Maybe have some kind of steampunk Protoss invade this land. Everyone can enjoy killing some Protoss. And I also enjoyed exploring the world. You can walk around the islands, approach them from different directions with a ship, fight guys on foot or bombarded from a ship, try to be sneaky or guns blazing. There are options. That's the thing. I just enjoy having options of how to approach things. Probably why I replayed Deus Ex a bajillion times. This approach is actually a pretty major part of it, as the game is open world. And it made me think of how few open world top-down pixel games are there. Which actually brings me to a very important point to me personally. This game is released in 2023. However, nothing here screams this year. It looks like a game from 2010, maybe even 2007. I mean, it's pixel aesthetic. And I'm not trying to say that, oh, it's bad, it's hardcore pixels of old people. What I'm trying to say is, why wasn't this made earlier, or something like it? Nothing here is that crazy or new or innovative. Nothing needed some sort of new technical innovation. But again, this isn't meant to be a negative, or at least not a negative for Black Skylands. Instead, it's meant as an insult to the whole damn games industry. Why wasn't this made sooner? I would have killed to play this back in 2010 or 2015 or anywhere in between. This would have been a killer, or an instant classic. I think gamers are actually honest to get spoiled for choice nowadays, and it's gotten to the point where games need some sort of strong, unique idea to stand out. There are just so many games nowadays, and a lot of them are damn good. Imagine if it came together with Terraria, and kept releasing updates till now. I mean, in the beginning Terraria was very basic and just kind of boring, all things considered, but it kept updating again and again and again. It got so big, for so little money. It's just ridiculous. Imagine if Black Skylands was the same way. How insane, how huge a game would that be? But, okay, I guess I'm being confused. I'm not sure if my point comes across very well, but either way, I think still there are some negatives. What did I dislike? The difficulty. And I was playing on normal, which I imagined would deliver some sort of challenge. It did not. The only times I died is when I tried to get across chasms I wasn't supposed to cross and refused to grapple back. Oh, and another time when I went out of my way to try and win without using guns and got stuck in a corner, surrounded by a whole slew of melee enemies. However, there are higher difficulties and I will try them in the future. The problem is that there is a little bit of a problem with clarity, let's call it that. I often struggle to see enemy attacks, and especially when fighting a swarm, their projectiles are hard to see with how colorful everything is. But in addition to that, the hitboxes feel a little inconsistent as well. It's especially apparent when I was trying to get past immobile enemies and turrets. They'll shoot a projectile. I sidestep a projectile and it hits anyway, because the player and enemy hitboxes are actually quite a bit bigger than they would appear. The hitboxes and visual clarity issue and add difficulty, which is actually very complicated to combat. And it's actually a fairly common issue. Skull the Hero Slayer has this in spades. I actually couldn't beat it even with cheating because I flat out did not see enemy attacks coming at all in the later levels. Risk of Rain turns into an insane FPS chugging mess if you go for longer than 20 minutes, even if you have an absolutely insane hardware. Hell, even Warframe is a goddamn rave if mirages involved. Point is, it's not a rare issue, and I know it's hard to balance, but it still bears mention. Oh, and ship combat can be difficult due to these same issues. Doubly so when on-foot combat. Story is also forgettable for the most part. This goes double for the side quests. They are truly open world side quests. I actually sit here and try to remember any. I guess I remember one where the girl gets rescued from the Falcons, but she actually joined them. And there was another about digging the well for the lumber mill, I think. Anyway, the point is I finished the game today, and this is all I remember about side quests. Oof. This is a minor one, but I still bitch about it as it's pretty annoying. The mods for weapons, like longer stock or sight or barrel or whatever, those come from boxes, and those boxes can only be unlocked in special occasions, and it takes like 5 seconds to get through the whole animation of a single box. So for each weapon, there are 3 levels of boxes, not counting the swarm weapons, and a total of at least 2 types of these mods for each weapon. Each box is manually placed in these unlockers, and then it's about waiting for the animation. Absolutely riveting gameplay right there. It takes so goddamn long. This reminds me of Hearthstone, only a bit less annoying and time consuming. This should just auto-open when going back home, or I don't know, get some identification ones like Diablo or something. And another minor one is the fact that boarding can be a little buggy. At times there are these big ships which player can board and fight the enemies there. Most of the ships are hunkered down, no access there, but these ones with open decks sometimes bug out and move without actually moving the player, so it's easy to fall off. They also stop being marked on the map if cleared out, so if you missed the resources and fell off, you gotta look all over to try and figure out where exactly it was. And of course, clearing out the big ship doesn't clear out the smaller ones, so they can kill the player while trying to loot everything. Just as boarding can be very annoying. And I guess if I were to keep bitching about tiny issues, the swarm was disappointing. By the time it rolls into the story, they don't really pose much of a threat. There is very little to actually do where they hang out. It's visible from the beginning, this giant scary swarm area, but when it's actually there, available, it's just a couple of trips there and whatever, I guess I'm not going there again. It reminds me of Corruption and Terraria without hard mode. Actually, with hard mode as well. Just very little incentive to keep going there. At least in most of the normal world, there are islands to free. Maybe a side quest here and there, also resources early on. But nothing like that in the swarm. And by that point, resources don't matter at all. And there's also no dump for resources, by the way, so once you upgraded everything, I don't know what you're supposed to do with it. Whatever. So in the end, I've got quite a few minor complaints, major points to praise, and still an overall taste of something being lacking. I don't know what it is, but the whole game felt like it lacked that special something to put it over the edge. Even if I did keep playing it in really long sessions and not really getting distracted by every little thing like a lot of other games. Yeah, I was thinking of getting some examples, but I think that would throw too much shade. Anyway, I still feel like the game just fails in some way to make an unforgettable recommendation, but I still believe it is a recommendation. It is a solid game enough to buy.